Every fleet says safety is their top priority. But what if the biggest risk isn't speeding, fatigue, or distraction? What if it's the blind spot in how we think about road safety itself? Today's vehicles are reading the road in milliseconds. AI predicts the risk before we even feel it. But in the end, it's still people, the culture inside organisations that decides what happens next. You're listening to the Safe Lane podcast, brought to you by Fuse, Fleet and CRI, where we go behind the data, behind the dashboards, and into the decisions shaping the future of road safety. I'm Simon Donovan, and in this episode, we're talking to someone who's been at the centre of Australia's road safety evolution for more than a decade. The director of the National Road Safety Partnership Programme, Jerome Carslake. Jerome, thank you for flying it from Melbourne. How are you today, mate?
I'm going very well. Thanks for the opportunity to come in to join you, Simon.
So, Jerome, you spent years building partnerships that bring safety off the page and into practice, from utilities and logistics to local government. However, your path into the world wasn't exactly planned. What drew you into road safety and what's kept you here?
I think a lot of people come into road safety by accident. My background's agriculture. I'm from a large farm in the northern wheat belt in WA, from a town called Morawa. And I guess the story for me is when you grow up in the bush, you sort of take it for granted and you think people die, and that's part of living out in the country areas. So for me, when I got my driver's license, I failed the first time, which is really bad in the country. When I went to go get my driver's license the second time, there was 3 the first time, 2 the second. And the reason the second one was there because her brother had died that morning in an accident. So it just shocked me. So every time I get my driver's license renewal, I look at that and I sort of remember back to him. So for me, what I've sort of come to understand is road safety, it sort of shouldn't just be accepted as this is a cost of life. It's cultural. It's bigger than that. And we can all work together to basically get the tools of everyone to make better choices and be informed and how they can go on the road and drive to the conditions and get from A to B as safe as possible.
And Jerome, that's what it's all about. We talk about road safety a lot at Fuse, Fleet and CRI, but ultimately it's the people side and getting home to see your kids and see the families at the end of the day. So great point, Jerome. So, Jerome, let's address something head on, because I hear this all the time from fleet managers. They think about road safety programs as long-term investments with distant payoffs. But businesses need results now. And what do you think to that?
I think it's a bit of A and B. So I would sit there and say, start small, pick on one thing you can measure, work out how you can make an impact. Because it is a long-term investment, but you can get some really good short-term benefits as well. Like the moment you begin influencing behaviour, getting drivers to get their buy-in to it, you can reduce fuel usage. And the moment the fuel usage come down, there's a cost savings straight away. The other one's wear and tear on the vehicles. Like I know people, the moment I've started going through and engaging with organisations, their actual fleet size can be reduced because they haven't got 3 to 4 to 5 or more sitting in the workshop getting repaired all the time. And this is the hard part that people sort of realise. They always think it's such hard work. But I think you just got to unpick it, have a plan, one thing at a time, build on it. And the other key thing is just always make sure the resources in the support group and I guess a community within the organisation working around you, because it shouldn't just be responsibility of one person. It's a shared responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one thing, I mean, if you're running 100 vehicles and you can make even a small improvement, 5%, for example, across things like fuel, accidents, our world insurance claims, you're looking at some significant savings, often 6-figure savings. That's a conversation that we've seen that works better with C-suites. Companies are looking for quick wins at the moment. And, particularly in the current climate, the short-term wins seem to be more on the table at the board meetings than ever, given the global economy. So, yeah, just looking for small wins, those little gains, as you said, the 5%. Now, Jerome, you're not asking for them to wait 3 years in this scenario. You're showing them a measurable return within potentially 12 months. Is that a fair statement?
I think if you go about it the right way, the key thing is workers want to be heard. People out on the road, you've got to engage them. And you've got to do it from, I guess, a strengths position. You need to get them to trust you, because quite often I'm up here at the moment because of the Utilities Forum this week, and the big thing is we're engaging with a lot of companies, and what happens in that space is a lot of them find at the moment we reach out to them and we survey the drivers as part of the inputs, they want to be heard and they're very excited about it all. And then we sort of develop a series of actions and those sort of components to put in it. It's because everyone quite often put money into a vehicle in a heartbeat, but investing in the people, and that's where the cost savings are, because the damaged vehicle comes from the people because they don't understand the why. And I just think those little pieces of change to them all. And I think one of the other big ones that people quite often do is they think they've got to go fast. They think they've got to put pressure on. They've got to make day, and they've got to do all these meetings per day. And you just take that pressure off them.
Yeah.
And you've got a whole different, more engaged, more productive worker.
Yeah.
And the wear and tear of the cost on the vehicle will go down as well.
It's that classic soft cost versus sort of objective cost. They see the asset, the motor vehicle, and they don't necessarily see the employee cost. It's harder to measure.
The other interesting thing on that as well is if you can reduce your operational costs, I think it's over 5%. This might be more your world.
Yeah.
So, but if you bring that operational component, that's equal to 20% savings in marketing and those other components, because it's an operational budget coming down. I remember government once, we did a case study with Bureau of Meteorology, and the government was big on dividend savings. And Commonwealth has some of the largest fleets out there. And I was like, why don't you build that into your measures for saving dollars for government?
Now, Jerome, we spoke last week about a specific example where some of these short-term savings, we talked about reducing fleet size. I think you had an example with a security company. I don't know if you want to talk about
that. I think Claire Kay, fantastic fleet manager, she came in, she was sitting next to the CFO when they were dolling out the seats, and she was a bit sort of hesitant about that. But when she went through and started showing to the CFO the savings she was making, and I said, so I think she reduced the fleet size by 20% and improved its performance because they didn't have the vehicles in getting repaired and banged up, those sort of components. But she also pulled back on the fuel usage and all those sort of components because it's all linked together.
Yeah.
And these were direct savings she brought in. But I think she always says one of the key secrets to her was she had the ear of the CFO because they sat next to each other. And she formed a good bond and relationship. And if she didn't have that opportunity, he didn't understand fleet. He didn't understand this cost. To him, it was a vehicle. What does that have to do, I guess, with the operational performance? And there was a huge amount because their entire business was people driving vehicles around.
Yeah, the downtime of vehicles isn't measured particularly. We look at trying to reduce accident rates, but then that obviously has a compounding, impact on vehicles off the road. Yeah, again, it's trying to create a narrative, having the voice of the C-suite, particularly the number crunchers in the business, who often dictate a lot of these decisions. So we have technology now. We can track pretty much everything: speed, braking, cornering, even crash probability. But are organizations actually using this technology effectively, in your opinion?
I think it very much depends on the organisation and the why it's been put in place. Because I know organisations have put it in because the contracts say they have to put it in. Mm-hmm. And then when the contractor says, well, you're going to give me the results, and they says, that wasn't written into the contract. You said I just have to put it in. So it means nothing. They put the cost in to deliver the product. I think, and they're the companies that are always going to struggle. Whereas these other ones, Osmos, Essential Energy, all these other ones we've done some great webinars with of late. And these people, even the CEO goes, my job is not to know what their performance is. That's up to the drivers. And they create this culture of trust. They're their front line. They generate the revenue for the business. And I think it's the narrative. They gamify it. They work with it. They see how they're performing. And I think one of the best comments I'm ever hearing from a fellow Michael Mills is he knew he's hit success when one of his drivers said to him when he was chatting with him, he goes, my wife complains all the time that I drive like a grandma now. Because it's gone, wasn't just in his work driving, it's in everyday life. And he goes, and his philosophy is, what's the big rush? I'll get there, and I'll get there in a safe way. Yeah,
that's a really good point. It sounds like how you deploy it, again, it's back to that buy-in culture that we talk about a lot.
And if you put it in for a reason of penny pinching and I'm going to monitor the drivers, I'm going to try and save and squeeze them, you're creating an us versus them culture.
Yeah.
You want them to buy in and understand the why. And if you're driving every day for work, it's a great way for performance measuring.
Yeah.
And saying, well, what's your KPI on this? Why are you doing it? And reward them. Give them some great incentives.
Yeah, we talk a lot about gamifying and creating almost an internal competition, which I believe has it's quite a short-term impact from the conversation we had this morning. We've seen some major changes when you create competition, but you were saying the challenge with creating competition is you've got to be consistent. Otherwise, you get the performance bell curve, I suppose you call it.
Actually, that's a great way of putting it, the bell curve, because it does. The moment the games and the incentives like there, it drops off. And in these tough climates, I know, talking with some of the transport and other sort of groups as well, a $50 voucher to get food. Things, just those basics, because you're not taxed on them.
Yeah.
It's a reward, it's incentive, and it makes a world of difference to the family bottom line. If you bring home, here's $50 off your shopping or something like that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take much to make people feel appreciated.
Yeah, acknowledging. I think you've talked about this before, the positive effect. It's like parents, isn't it? It has by far more benefits than the negative effect. So looking for positives rather than negatives, acknowledging it. I always think, as an example, if a CEO walks into an organisation and sees Jerome in the morning coming back from whatever the job they're doing, say, hey, look, thanks for driving so safely, you're one of our top drivers, and walks off, the impact that will have on Jerome as a driver versus, hey, you're in a naughty corner, I know that you've had a couple of events in the last couple of months. I think Americans are very good at, aren't they? They're good at acknowledging the positives rather than the negatives.
And I think every human likes that. I think that drives inspiration, innovation, also staff retention. Where would you prefer to work, Simon? Would you prefer to place that beats you around and you don't want to get into work, this sort of stuff, and your KPIs are stretched all the time and you can't hit those targets? I heard that the other day.
Yeah.
People just can't hit the targets,
yeah.
But we keep putting more and more on them. So they're going to speed. But there's also another way, which is a harder cohort as well. If you have companies where there's very altruistic drivers, where they're so enthused about their job, they want to give back, they want to make a difference to the community, and you got to pull them in, because they'll be rushing to get to the other place as fast as possible because they want to help someone.
Yeah.
And their focus is always on someone else. So how do you pull them back? And I think this is how they say, well, we want you to do that, but you've got to get there alive. You've got to have a driver's license, and we do it in a safe way. And I think the big one everyone forgets about is your brands on the vehicle.
Yeah, we see a lot of the not-for-profit vehicles on the road at the moment, and they're quite heavily branded. And you think, hey, who's in the vehicle with them? But secondly, what does that mean from a marketing brand perspective?
Well, I had a funny story once where one guy rocked up and he was driving really aggressive, came up the butt of another car and he was honking him and all this sort of stuff, and got around him, took off, and it turned out he was one of the GMs of that company. And so because he saw his branded vehicle, he caught up, he found the person and had words and says, that is not how we represent our company.
Well, it's not just the fuel savings here as well. If the vehicle's driven in a way that we'd deem sustainable, then you obviously get a reduction in fuel, but there's also an environmental impact as well. Because companies nowadays are, as you full well know, being tracked on ESG. And again, you can relate that back to the technology and how do you track real-time carbon usage without some form of data analytics. And again, not to get into the weeds of the fused product, but that's what we've been using over the last couple of years now, using that second by second data, actually converting that into not just crash technology, but also then converting it into eco scoring. So the two are very related in terms of the relationship between safe driving, smooth driving, and crash probability. And from an underwriter's perspective, when we see organisations using telematics to demonstrate actual behaviour change, not just collecting data, that tells us they're serious about managing risk, which should translate into better terms.
Which it does, because the risk profile has really generally changed.
Jerome, we have all the technology in the world, but if people don't care, nothing really changes. How do you shift culture in an organisation that's doing things the same way for decades?
Yeah, culture change is hard. And let's be honest, you can mandate all the policies and install the technology you want, but if people don't believe in it, you haven't got their buy-in, nothing is really going to change. So what we've found is that culture change shifts when two things sort of happen. I guess the first is getting leadership to generally care, and we've got to get their buy-in. We were talking about the C-suite earlier and how you make that case to them. But it's not just about them caring, they've really got to demonstrate it. This means talking about safety in meetings, celebrating the wins, not just punishing the failures. And that's why I thought that little $50 voucher, it's the simple things of actions that people care about. And they see that, and that's what they come to expect within the culture of the organisation. The second thing is really making it personal. When drivers understand that this isn't about the company avoiding insurance claims, it's about them getting home to their family, and that's when it really clicks. And I think one point I really love getting made, some of these big companies, especially in regional areas, the likelihood of them going past a loved one, a family member, a mate, all that sort of stuff goes up significantly. And if they care about safety, they're more likely to get home safely as well.
Yeah, great point. So it's more of a bottom-up, not just a top-down approach by the sounds of it.
Yeah, correct. It's both. I think you can't just expect leadership just to push it forward and try and drag everyone along. I remember I've heard the line going, if you're not on board, the steam train's going. And that's a real, I guess, dictator sort of approach. I think you need to bring everyone along. The bottom-up makes it really real. We've seen organisations involve drivers and setting safety targets and reviewing the data and then shaping the program, and buy-in goes to the roof. And sometimes it might be, this is the average for the whole sort of organisation. This is the score we've got. Let's see if we can do better.
Well, and here's where the insurance industry can either help or hinder, because it's not just pricing on past claims and not recognising organisations that are genuinely improving their culture. We're missing a point.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The ESG agenda and the safety agenda aren't separate. And I've seen the road safety space quite often. A lot of them are battling, saying we should be pushing our barrow more than the others. I think they're perfectly aligned. Some behaviours that reduce emissions also reduce risk. Smooth driving, better route planning, engaged drivers, harsh acceleration's gone, harsh braking, those things. It's all the same sort of thing.
We, as underwriters, see hundreds of submissions every month. Fleet lists, claims history, and growth projections. That's pretty much the standard that's all we receive, really. It's enough to generate a quote, but very few submissions tell us the story behind those numbers. When a broker comes to us with even just a one-page overview of the customer's risk and management journey, showing they've implemented telematics or focused on driver behaviour, their submission immediately stands out. We're not just looking at past claims, we're pricing for future risk. I had that submission recently from an aged care operator. Good claims history, but the broker included a brief narrative about the driver training plan and also how they were going to use the telematics. So the extra context means that we could offer more competitive terms because we understood the trajectory.
I think one of the terms used in there was journey. And I think that's exactly what this is. It's a continuous safety journey. And if you're getting the context straight away to know what's going on in there, they're talking about understanding the drivers, engaging the drivers. You're talking about training. Because training can be so many things. It can be a poster on the wall, toolbox, all this sort of stuff. If they're beginning to do that, they're actually understanding where the risks are with their drivers. So it makes a lot more sense. If they're sharing more information with you, why wouldn't you want to buy in and get on their side?
Yeah. So I suppose the advice to brokers is when you're reviewing the claims history, particularly the larger fleets, see if you can see patterns there as well. There's a lot of simple AI tools now that you can use to analyze, a PDF file. So you're even just looking for those patterns, so you can ask those questions back to the fleet, so you can get a better understanding of the risk profile. And back to what we were saying with Jerome, then you can create that sort of slip back to the underwriter.
I guess the other part is by having this technology, it gives you the independent umpire to really use that as a lever to engage people with, because it's not hearsay. It's not I think. Well, here's the evidence. Here's how I'm going to have a conversation with you. Because if you haven't got that, it can feel like you're beating down on some of those people, because you're like saying 85% of people think they're a fantastic driver, which is statistically impossible. Now you get the tangible evidence saying, well, these are the skills of a driver. This is what we're going to do. And then you take them on a journey, you engage them, and you can sort of bring them back. The other question might be is there things within the organisation that's putting pressure on them? Are they trying to do too many things at once? Is something happening at home?
Yeah.
It's usually after a weekend, it's usually the high risk period on the Monday as people heading out, and if you're on a bigger swing as well, it's usually that first period, because if you're working on a swing which might be 10, 12 days, it's usually that first part of it, because then people get into a routine when they're out and about and they create habits. So it's always that first part. Well, the other thing might be if a new Netflix series or something like that drops late one night and someone's a fan, they might do a binge on that. And you could do a bit of a promo, a bit of humour going in, saying, if everyone's doing this, just be mindful. You still got to drive the next day. Yeah.
So let's talk about something that's often overlooked in terms of vehicles as workplaces. WHS applies to every other workplace. Why is the vehicle treated differently, in your opinion, Jerome?
I think that's a really good question, that one. And I was drawing back to your reference, I guess, earlier around the heavy vehicle sector, because I guess there's a regulator that's actually very functional in that space. I think in the light vehicle area, there's a bit more apathy from the regulator in particular, but I think that's beginning to change. As you said, the new WHS laws. The biggest thing in the light vehicle sector is it's out of sight, out of mind. A lot of companies, organisations don't know how to measure it. They haven't got measures or reporting in place. And they should have all that stuff in place, especially with the new psychosocial laws and things like that coming in, and the ESG requirements on directors. These are all the channels they should be putting in place to go through. And I think as they begin to understand the risk exposed to the vehicle, but also the costs to the business, the C-suite will suddenly get a lot more interested in saying, well, how can I work? How do I measure this? And what tools are available to really draw them in? That's what I think your app in particular can make life a bit easier for some companies.
Thank you for the plug there, Jerome.
I've got it in my car, so I've been looking at it.
That's the thing, whether Safe Work acknowledges it or not, if you're an employer and your staff are driving as part of their job, which it counts for a lot of businesses, you have a duty of care. If something goes wrong, you can't claim ignorance.
Very, very true. And you can't. If it's after the fact and something goes wrong, someone's injured, someone's hurt, well, they're going to come after you. And if you then go and put all these things in place after the fact, the coroner or those people are going to sit there and go, well, it's a little bit late now. Because as you may not be aware, it's the number one, the workplace is the number one risk for workers. Nearly 50% of workers are killed on the road. We've got 1,300 deaths taking place, and it's up around 41,000 serious injuries.
Wow.
So it's big numbers you're talking about. It has a huge cost on the country.
And you were saying that you don't feel as though the statistics are accurate in terms of how they're reported. I think it's a bone of contention for you at the moment.
It's something a colleague of mine, we were just talking about it, and we just looked at it and we said, if 20 people are dying direct from the vehicles as reported by Safe Work, is that reasonably practical of a number out of 1,300? Like, I just sit there thinking, surely it should be sort of higher than that. Are we really because one of the weaknesses is we don't capture purpose for journey. And we certainly know if you're driving a truck, you're driving it for work.
Yeah.
But they're only 4% of the fleet, and they account for around 15 to 16% of all fatalities. So we have those ones, and then we go into the light vehicle, and it gets a lot greyer. And I think, talk about grey, the whole emergence of grey fleet is reducing. And what does that look like? Like, that's a huge segment that we're not picking up.
So people don't know how to report it, number one, by the sounds of it. It sounds like there's a lack of knowledge across this entire conversation. But also, if it's not being recorded properly, then, and ultimately when it sits with government, the numbers don't really portray what's happening on the roads. And how do you build policy on that, I suppose?
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. Like, let's think about it. If you were in the business sector and you could pass it through to CTP, compulsory third party, and instead of going to the work cover schemes, where would you prefer it to land? Yeah. And then it's picked up Joe Public versus the business sector. The other one is near misses. We're talking about bingles. How major is a bingle? Like, if your car keeps getting beaten up in the car parks and it's not collected anywhere, and then all of a sudden you hit someone, next minute they're like, holy crap, we didn't see this coming. Yeah. We had all the lead data there, but you weren't capturing it. So you can't, ignorance isn't an excuse.
Yeah, no, it's complicated. Let's talk about the end goal, race to zero. Zero fatalities, zero serious injuries. Is it actually achievable, or is it just aspirational?
Over time, it's going to be achievable. We have all this great new technology coming on. It won't be taking place overnight. The hardest thing is the age of our vehicle fleet. I think we're up around 11.2 years. And if you're involved, I think fatalities might be sitting up around 12 and a half, 13 years. So people involved in, so we just have a very old fleet. We're not like the Europeans and other sort of ones. So that's what's going to pull us back. Sweden's had a huge impact where they've made enormous improvements, but they really take a systematic approach. And also culturally is quite different there as well. It's about us. Unfortunately in Australia, it seems to be very much about me. Right. And I think this is where we talk about how do we shift that back to the reference I made to the person driving like a grandmother's what his wife said. If we can get everyone sort of thinking that sort of culture, it's not a rush. It's not, I'm not going to have to get A to B as fast as possible. Someone's coming in, I give them space. I allow space around a heavy vehicle, being patient, courteous, thinking of other sort of people. It seems a bit of an alien thing out in our roads. Right, okay. So it sounds like we've got the knowledge and we've got the technology. So what do you think's stopping us here in Australia? What's stopping us here in Australia? I try to answer this one in a careful way. It's an interesting one. I think we're a big country. Like a lot of the fatalities that are taking place out in regional, remote sort of areas where there's sort of poor road infrastructure. And once again, people will just open it up and begin driving to what they think is safe. We probably need to pull them back a little bit and just explain to them, drive to the conditions, not to what you think is safe. Once again, that's where some of these telematics and those sort of, because it basically guarantees they're going to sit at a safe speed. I think we need to really engage the public quite a bit. Once again, it's just relying on just a purely compliance culture of cameras and all those components. I don't think that's ever going to do it, because when the cameras aren't around, it's out of sight, out of mind.
Well, we are a country that is famously good at following rules.
We are.
I mean, speed cameras. I mean, I've just come back from the UK, and UK is the freeways or motorways are just average speed cameras now. So they I don't know what the statistics against sort of UK is in terms of fatalities. I think a little bit of research I've done is it slightly better in Northern Europe than Australia? Different topography, different sort of road rules, but it's also quite similar.
It's the best in the world is like Sweden, Netherlands. They're constantly sitting up there. Helsinki, I think, have just achieved a record for no fatalities in quite a long time. The UK, and then you come into Australia. Victoria is one of the top ones. But once again, you look at Victoria, look how small the population density, those sort of components, and problem is distance is the killer. Rapid response, being able to get out to people, pick them up. If there's a way where if you can get someone within an hour, that's called the golden hour.
Right.
Chances of survival goes through the roof. And it's a lot harder in some areas in Australia.
Yeah, we're a continent really, aren't we?
Yeah. And if you haven't driven, like I said, I'm Western Australia, 4 hours north, driving tomorrow or back one way. Sometimes I go up and back in a day.
Yeah, okay. So from an insurance perspective, we can measure and reward that improvement, but better safety culture leads to fewer claims, which leads to better terms, which frees up budget to invest more in safety. So it is a positive loop. So again, we were talking about in business, is if there's a win-win-win, then, why aren't we embracing it more? So
I love that. I think you're exactly right. And I think that's where the incentive, if you can see you're saving money and you're not putting it off elsewhere and you're looping it back into the system, it gives you the chance to continuously improve and drive change. So once you've started it, pick one thing, measure it, improve it, move on to the next sort of thing, and use these as carrots to move people along.
Yeah.
Don't just try and cover costs and C-suite goes out for a better lunch.
Well, it's trying to take it from, the data, insurance premiums, it's all sort of, again, it's the people side that we're talking about today. It's all the sum of the parts, isn't it? If you drive differently and you drive better, then you have less accidents, you save fuel. But I think we don't focus on the people side. We're a fleet risk underwriter, but when we're talking to brokers, we often talk about, well, it's not just the accident to the vehicle, it's the accident to the third party, and it's the accident to the third party person, and then it's the accident to yourself, and then it's the time off the road, and then so you're going back to what I said right at the start. It's very much a holistic total cost of risk that we talk about. So yeah, there's more to it than just writing a fleet policy and trying to stop accidents as the total cost of risk.
Yeah, well, I think it's really about every driver, everyone getting home safely every single time, and I think that's achievable. I think one of the most powerful WorkSafe ads was when they hammered that home, the fellow getting home to his family, and the celebration all the time for that. The other part is when an incident takes place on the side of the road, whether you're involved or you come across it, if it's not your fault, that stuff, that has a human impact and that stays with you.
Yeah.
And I've experienced ones of these and it always stays with you. You can talk to it and it brings it back up in your mind. And how you then address that as an organisation, you want your workers to be out there, but you want them to get back home safe mentally, physically as well. Yeah.
So back to the race to zero, I believe we can get there. But not because the technology is necessarily getting better, because it is. But I think it's because people are starting to realise it matters. And it's not so much a compliance exercise. It's really about the person driving the vehicle. And back to that, maybe it's just because I've got a young family now. It's trying to make sure I get home safely to my family, regardless of my trip. My commute is a couple of hours each way. And I definitely drive with that mindfulness now that I want to be at home with my wife and son, and I'm not going to make those risky decisions. So I think we can get there, but again, it's back to mindset and choice. And they say you choose your attitude. I think you say you drive like
You drive the way you live, which is the way you work. And I think you're exactly right. If we can just get into the minds, and that's why it's a lot of these ads, which are the empathy, the point, and the highest risk cohort are the younger sort of drivers. There's a reason, especially the males. And getting to think about, they're getting home to their partner, their loved ones, their fun, those sort of components, because they have a whole life to live.
Yeah.
You don't want to cut it off at the stage because you've done some dumbass thing that wraps you around a pole. And
statistically, certainly from an insurance side, they represent always the highest risk.
That's why you insure more. I think below 25, there's a higher insurance cost for them.
Well, 100%. Yeah, there's definitely loading.
And that's always one of the things I've always been fascinated by. Is there a way you can use some of the technology you have and those sort of items to say, well, if you've got these great and you can show they're a good driver, can we reward them for that?
Well, that's exactly. I mean, we talked about this on a different format, but the UK mandates pretty much black box technology for first-time drivers. So young drivers, 17, 18, they have to use the black box. I think it's 80% of young drivers have some sort of data, and then it feeds back to the insurer, and that determines whether or not they get policy year 2. So they're not penalised the way that we do over here and assumptions based. They get a policy, but in year 2, they get policy will shoot up based on their actual driver scoring rather than because they're 18 or 19. So they're data driven.
And the big thing is I guess if we talk about what makes a good driver, life satisfaction, there's some research that's come out that really points those sort of things. The 3 measures. Have you got meaning? Have you got engagement? Have you got pleasure in your life? And a good driver will have all 3 of them in balance. And you can see how an organisation fits into that perfectly. But you think about what's out of whack out of those sort of 3 spheres for a young male.
What pleasure, really.
So that pleasure thing, the stimulation, the thrill-taking, those sort of components. And that's why that's out of whack, and then it sort of builds itself back over time. So if you can pull that enthuse and engage them with that, and that's why it might be the other part. Can you use levers like rewards, incentives, other parts to pull them back? Go take your thrills out elsewhere. Maybe you can take your partner out for a nice dinner. Go to a gig, go to a concert, those sort of things. Use them as incentives.
That actually makes me think now you're organising that driver competition internally, and then how you structure that might be based upon almost the demographic of your workforce.
I think that's a great idea. If you then had, for this demographic, this is a reward, and you use that as the lever to reflect on who they are. No. And it also shows you thinking about your workforce.
So for the broker or fleet manager listening right now, maybe feeling a little bit overwhelmed, where do they actually start? The golden question.
I think you just always pick one thing. You can point them onto the NRSPP website. We've released a new performance measure assessment tool they can use, and you can sort of draw on them, give a bit of a framework. The other one is like for most fleets, look at fuel consumption, eco-safe driving. And the hard thing is some drivers might go, I don't give a crap about the environment. But if you can link the incentives with that as well, so it might be if you can get fuel savings down to here and there's a bit of a kickback to your drivers, you got their buy-in. So those results will really help yourself. Think about how many vehicles you have in the workshop, what's the cost of those elements, and then can you sort of talk back to your broker and show you've got change? I think we've got some great webinars and case studies on our website which talks exactly those sort of processes, the small steps, getting the workshops involved, all those other components. So I don't think, so one other thing I'd say, get a driving community together. So make sure you get representation from around the organisation so it's not one person doing it.
Right, okay.
I think get the workers, managers, and how you're going to report up, what that's all going to look like. That's the other part I would always recommend.
It's almost, we talked about this before, like a mini change management plan, but start with a plan.
And if you plan and get buy-in, so if people help you develop it and have input into it. And I like our comment earlier talking around the makeup of the fleet and that sort of stuff. Like you imagine if you have a group and they work and they come up with the idea of here's rewards for these different demographics, and you can sort of show, you can lead them that way.
Yeah, push and pull. Again, parenting, isn't it? It's got to be their idea. And for the drivers, because ultimately this is about you. Use the tools available. Track your own performance. See where you can improve, because every time you make a safer choice behind the wheel, you're not just protecting yourself, you're protecting everyone else on the road. And honestly, there's something satisfying about watching you score improve. I'm competitive like that. Now, I've been using the Fuse app for 3 years, and I genuinely check it at least once or twice a week. And I do certain trips and I won't dare check it because I know I might have made a couple of decisions or accelerated. So I'm always thinking about, I've got this, driver's school and I compete against my peers. And I think if you've got a natural competitiveness in you, you will find that your driving will change. You manage what you measure. So, Jerome, over to you. Any comments there?
Mate, I'm a highly competitive person. I swim, I row, I cycle, all these sort of things. So anything where I see a score, I'm always checking it, saying, how can I do better than that? And where do I sit? And I always have philosophy. I want to be better than most. And that's probably one of the things, even when I'm swimming in the pool, there's a person in the lane across next to me, I want to go overtake them and all that sort of components. So I think if you can get in, and there's a reward at the end of the pile as well, it's even better.
Yeah, no, good comment. Right, that's it for this episode of the Safe Lane podcast, brought to you by Fuse, Fleet and CRI. Huge thanks to you, Jerome. Thanks, Jerome. Really appreciate it. Thanks for flying in as well.
Oh, my pleasure. It's great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to have a chat with you, Simon.
No problem at all. And thanks to everyone at the National Road Safety Partnership Programme for the work you're doing to make Australia's roads safer. If you've enjoyed this conversation, follow the Safe Lane on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or YouTube Music. New episodes will drop quarterly, so hit follow and stay up to date with the latest thinking on fleet safety, innovation and intelligent risk management. And if you're a fleet manager, broker or part of the fleet insurance world, we'd love to know what challenges and ideas are on your radar. Until next time, stay informed, stay prepared and stay in a safe lane.